Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. As always, we have a great webinar on tap, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will be able to watch it later on. Following today's webinar, we'll be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for either of our panelists, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. And also at the end of today's webinar, we are doing a drawing for 3 $50 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our big 3 winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is 5 reasons why organizations struggle to deliver value in Agile and DevOps. Our speakers today are Eric Robertson, who is VP of Product Management at CollabNet version 1. Hi, Eric, how are you? Great to see you.
Likewise, thank you, Charlene, for hosting us in DevOps.com.
You're welcome. My pleasure. We also have Dan Beauregard, who is the VP of Cloud and DevOps Evangelist at Zebia Labs. Dan, always a pleasure to see you as well. Welcome.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Charlene, and great to be joining you, Eric, for this webinar.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you've got a couple intro things you want to say, and then we'll kick off the discussion.
Sure. Again, thank you so much, Charlene, for you and DevOps.com for hosting. Welcome and hello, everyone. As Charlene said, I'm one of your presenters, Eric Robertson, VP of Product Marketing Management at CollabNet version 1. I've been with the company for close to 5 years and have a background in software and product engineering and held product management services and operational engineering roles for startups and large enterprises. I'm a certified SPC consultant and have delivered solutions and services for a number of customer engagements. I'm honored to be joined by my recent colleague and friend, Dan Beauregard. Right, Dan, welcome, my friend, and I know you're excited to get started with this topic.
I am, very much so. So just very quickly, Dan Beauregard, VP of Cloud and DevOps Evangelist. I started my career as a developer practitioner and did that for over 10 years. And then for the last, 14 years, something so much, I've been working with DevOps teams and executives on helping them make their software development and delivery processes more efficient and more reliable. And I think that's just a great lead into our conversation today.
Definitely. I think go ahead, go to the next slide here. So let's cover the agenda. So we're going to do a little bit about us as far as some new news here and some company. Charlene's actually going to drive the conversation for us around these challenges. And then we're going to use research that we procured from Forrester and some interesting findings that we want to share with you about that and how our hypothesis that Dan alluded to around DevOps, Agile, and DevOps, how that actually is evolving and changing in the marketplace. We'll also take some questions from the audience as well, and then we'll have final remarks from there. So let's go ahead and get started. Great. So a quick overview of both companies before we begin. A little bit of history here. So some of you may know us as version 1, where we helped pioneer the Agile management tooling in 2002, way before it was a cool thing. Agile was a cool thing to do in the software development market. In August 2017, version 1 merged with CollabNet, supporting both companies' shared vision that Agile and DevOps are interconnected and governed practices. Our mission is to enable enterprises to plan, build, and deliver high-quality software at speed. And that mission was even realized even further with TPG, a leading PE firm acquiring a majority stake in CollabNet version 1. And just as a couple of weeks ago, and some new and exciting news, is that we merged with Zebia Labs, a leader in the DevOps toolchain and intelligence market. And you can see highlights from the press there. So along with this announcement, we have a new leadership headed by our new CEO, Ashok Reddy, who brings very strong enterprise leadership and vision for this new combined company. So it's actually perfect timing around this topic. Dan, you want to add anything more there?
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it well. So I think the big thing is it's a combination of CollabNet versions 1 upstream agile planning with ZBL Labs downstream release orchestration and deployment automation. That's where our strength has been for the last 10 years. We feel putting this together, we are going to be able to deliver to customers an end-to-end platform that just has not been available today.
Excellent, excellent. So on the next slide here, good, thanks you, Dan. So at CNV1, and I'm sure ZB had a similar premise. So about a year and a half ago, maybe close to 2 years ago, we started seeing this shift in the market. We started seeing that Agile and DevOps were key transformation practices for a lot of the software development and delivery teams. But we started seeing that it's not enough, right? Organizations, they really needed help identifying not just waste, but it was more about what are they delivering and focusing on the value. They seem to kind of lost that in the transition, in this transformation move here. And really, how can they start providing this full end-to-end visibility to all the stakeholders? So this was our hypothesis, that it was a gap here, and we really wanted to understand that gap. So what we did, and on the next slide here, we asked Forrester Research to test our hypothesis, right? So what they did was they went out and interviewed about 305 global professionals involved in the planning, building, the release, and our governance or management of software enterprises. And we did this in a variety of different industries from around the world. Next slide, please, Dan. And also, the respondents, we wanted to take a broad swab as far as the area and the respondents in the different levels as well. And so the respondents had to be significantly involved in one or more of the areas to qualify. As we can see here, we have a cross different seniority around that, and they had to already been starting this Agile DevOps, some type of DevOps, Agile DevOps adoption, because we wanted people in stream to really understand around that and really start looking at the personas and the roles that they were having in the different areas. So when we start talking to these folks, we wanted ones that had familiarity with the tool chain, different familiarity with the different end-to-end phases across the software lifecycle, from planning, development, delivery, kind of this concept to cash, or this idea to idea to customer type of concept. So this was basically the area that we wanted to focus. Dan, you want to add anything to here?
No, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, we want customers, enterprises that are focused in this space to get valid and meaningful results. So I think.
Yeah. Excellent. So on the next slide, Charlene, I'll probably turn it over to you to go ahead and begin our conversations on the challenges.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to hear about, the fact that DevOps, be still my heart, is not the end all be all of business transformation. So, as you said, I mean, there are a number of challenges, right? So, when we're talking about just the speed of software delivery is something that, they know that it needs to happen, and it needs to happen quickly. But it's not an easy task. So, what are some of the challenges that folks are seeing in this area? I mean, what are some of the barriers, if you will, to that speed and that the collaboration and the transparency with the whole, software delivery process that's impeding them?
Great. I think
Dan, sorry.
I'll start things off.
I'm just going to throw it out there.
So, yeah, no problem. So even though we have made great advances in pipeline orchestration, organizations still are dissatisfied with the current tool chain's automation capabilities. And this survey here, and we'll get to those results in a second, certainly backs that up. So the question is, why is that the case? Well, for one, there are so many tools that make up the DevOps tool chain. They go into so many different categories. If those familiar out there with our periodic table of DevOps tools that we have have had for years at ZBL Labs, I think we got 120 tools on our table, and that's just touching the full amount of tools that are available. It's not uncommon for organizations to have 15, 25 plus tools in a single tool chain for a single application. And as we know, enterprises are also very slow at ridding themselves of the legacy tools that they have in their environments.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, they are confined to certain phases or functions of automation, and you lose that fully connected pipeline that really is needed to get visibility throughout. You take this and then you add on the constant advances in technology, from cloud to serverless to containers. It's hard for organizations to keep up, and it's even harder to find the right expertise. So let's take a look at our poll results here at some of the things that we found. Now, I was a little surprised to see that not a single category had greater than 32%, not even a third percent full satisfaction in their automation as part of their DevOps tool chain. I was a little, I was probably expecting higher numbers in automated builds and automated deployments, since that's one of the core areas that many organizations have started within DevOps. But certainly, I will have to say the one that I'm not surprised with is the one that came in last, and that is automated compliance.
Right.
If you don't have fully connected tool chain, it's just not possible to collect all the compliance and audit data into a single data source, which makes proving compliance extremely difficult and very time consuming for many organizations out there.
So do you think, sorry to interrupt, but do you think that a lot of the compliance, the fact that it did come in dead last, do you think a lot of that has to do with the fact that compliance seems to be changing regularly, and there are new compliance regulations coming down the pipe regularly? And I would venture to say that the tools that are designed to automate compliance maybe aren't keeping up as quickly as they should be, which is kind of creating a bottleneck.
Yeah, I definitely say that is definitely part of it, and it's not, and so because it's changing so rapidly, that causes organizations to have to consistently make changes within their release pipelines. And to do that, now you have to continuously evolve and collect the data, and it's really about the data, right? Right. Each tool may have their own collection of data, but how do you put that all together into a consistent system of record that can then be used by the security and compliance folks and make it available to the auditing teams? Right,
and each compliance is a different, they have different rules, regulations around the compliance. Right. So yeah, you're right. Consistency is a total bummer sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's necessary, but it's really hard to accomplish. So.
It is,
yes.
And we see this especially in the highly regulated industries like the financial industries. We hear about all these breaches, and so this is driving the rush into how can I start, like Dan said, I have to now start changing my pipeline because I have to start building not only the quality but the compliance aspects into that pipeline as well. But if I have all this disconnection, and I'm going to talk about the handoff type of challenge that they see right now, it becomes even more daunting for organizations.
Yep. All right, okay. So our next poll looks into the lack of organizational and metric alignment between the business and technology groups. And I really believe that this finding is a real challenge for many organizations out there. So two things really caught my mind, right? So first, let's remember 10 plus years ago when DevOps came around, right? So the big thing was now we need to put the development teams and our operations teams together. And by doing so, I think, over the years, it's proven that we can deliver code faster. We added in DevSecOps into the mix, so we can not just do it faster, but we can deliver code more securely. But if we think about that, the technology changes come faster than the cultural changes, right? Mm-hmm. It takes longer for the cultural atmosphere within organizations to adjust to this.
Right.
Now let's fast forward, right? And there we were talking about two groups that at least had a common theme around technology. Now we're asking groups that don't have that same technology to go on, two completely isolated groups with very little in common. So a little bit different, right? So why does this matter? By bringing together development and operations teams, many organizations started to, wait a minute, I think I have notes of bullet points I was just going through there, so sorry about that. But if we now look at if we now look at bringing in the business folks, right? Mm-hmm. We need to understand how we bring them to the table. And the first thing is about communication, right? You can't have collaboration unless you have communication. So they need to be brought to the table early on. We're talking about development groups. If we're going to bring up new concepts to bring to the development teams, developers need to understand how that's going to impact the business if they're going to actually be able to build a feature that actually makes sense for the business. And if we look at it from vice versa, the business has if they have no way to track those features going into production, how are they going to plan accordingly? How can you track the value that is being added to the business? That this is core to why we are talking about value stream today, right? It's bringing that value back to the business. All right, let's look at some of the notable organizational challenges companies are facing. If we look at the results from our survey, we have 44% are in separate orgs, but either report to different leadership. So you have different management, so it's hard to get across those silos. 39% use different metrics. Why? Because they use different tools, right? The business side of the organization is using different tools than the technology side. And 34%, 30% different tools, and 23% say they have no visibility into what development organization does. This is where we need to start to make change and make value stream possible. Eric, did you want to add anything on to that?
Yeah, I think what you said there about the tooling and using different tools and the handoff points and the different measurements, that is all part of the visibility challenge, which I'm going to talk to you about next. And this just flows very well into that. Yeah, so wow, I think the title says it all, right? Improper work stream management leads to fragmented visibility, right? So here we have the green, which is the percent, which is the first bar, which is the percent who describe capability as very important to their software development delivery success. And then we have a light blue, which is the second bar, of percent who say that their organization does an excellent job executing on each capability, right? And then we have a red dot. And this red dot, it shows the gap that is 15% or more around that. So I think this is really interesting data. So a couple of things that I take away from this. First of all, I noticed that there's a gap in every single one of these categories, right? In other words, across the survey population, there isn't one area where people think that their organization is doing very well in that area, right? There's some amount of difficulty, Charlene alluded to this, some amount of struggle in getting to par, getting to excellence in all these categories. So folks in general are struggling with all these capabilities that they think are important. Now, there are capabilities, as we see here, that everybody feels are very important, like driving continuous improvement, certainly aligning software delivery business goals, which you can see is the big theme, but it's a struggle. That's the one takeaway. The other takeaway I have with this is that we're starting to see more and more of a theme, and Dan alluded to this, more of a theme of a technology aligning more closely with the business, right? So we've been talking about Agile for more than a decade, just about 2 decades, I would say, right? We're talking about DevOps for just about a decade. But the typical conversation around Agile and DevOps has happened within the technology realm, right? The tech teams, the IT teams. I see that changing very much now, right? And this is what that data is trying to show. So the theme of the day, probably the theme that we're going to see for the next coming years, is going to be how do we take those technology concepts and marry them with the business concepts so that the business and IT are working hand in hand, driving what Dan talked about, value together. So with this data, we're starting to prove our hypothesis, right? Where it's really about aligning the software delivery with the goals, driving that continuous improvement, but not just continuous technology improvement, but continuous value delivery so that our businesses can compete more effectively in the marketplace, right? This is what it's really all about. We're having this disruption in the marketplace. So how can business very quickly be agile and adapt to it? So to me, this is no surprise that we see these big gaps in these areas. So, and I think the next slide drills down even more into more depth around that. Perfect. Thank you, Dan. It really drills down more into that visibility of work. Now, that's really what it's about, right? The visibility of work across that. And I notice here that the level of visibility is also low in every category, right? Similar to what Dan saw in one of his slides, right? The highest level of visibility we have in any one of these categories is 34%, right? That means most people just don't have visibility into any of these areas, right? And this is in alignment with what I see in the field every day. Dan and I see this in the field every day. We have teams working in silos. We have lots of stovepipes. We're trying to get through that, but then we have to have a way that we manage and govern the work, right? We have backlogs. We have productivity tools. We have best of breed type of tools of choice that allows teams at each one of these levels to manage their work. That's all well and good. But what happens to that work when it passes to the other team, and as Dan alluded to, leaves one tool and goes into another, right? That's a challenge. And I think that this slide is really telling us that the work flows from team to team through the value stream concept to delivery. Much less, we're not even talking about cash, but if we look from just a concept to delivery, it's probably going from tool to tool, and the teams that are not associated with that tool are losing visibility of their work, right? So we definitely don't have visibility of the work and the value from the end-to-end perspective. Now, but I think what's also telling about this slide is that we have a really low number at the beginning of the story level, if you see here, right? And we'll also have a really low number at the enterprise level, right? And I think that underscores the challenge, and Dan alluded to, keeping the strategy and the execution of that strategy directly in alignment, right? So the folks down at the left of the story level, probably the teams, the practitioners, the ones that have the team level backlogs who are burning through these user stories, doing the implementation of the work, they don't have visibility into the enterprise level concerns of the strategy and vice versa, right? So what do the enterprise level folks, the portfolio folks, the planners, the leaders, the executives understand about the actual work that's being done and delivered? And I really think that highlights the big disconnect between the business and implementation on strategy and the relationship to delivery. And that's exactly the challenge that we're seeing organizations trying to solve today.
Just one thing on top of that, right? Practitioners know they have to build something, but really don't know why they have to build it. And if you make part of the reason and part of why they're building this for the business, you're going to get better results, which is going to be better experience for the customers.
Yeah, and hopefully we see that in the data coming up. That should show that, should reflect that. So go to the next challenge here, Charlene.
Yeah. So that was actually really fascinating about the visibility part. I had no idea, but it makes total sense. You know, if you look at you know, the fact that that projects are being slowed just because people don't have that visibility. So we get to the idea of unification then. So and optimization of the software delivery process, and you know, that value stream management, which is on everybody's lips. Everybody's talking about value stream management. As a matter of fact, we are going to have an ebook coming out on that very same topic very shortly. So stay tuned for that, folks. But yeah, so the idea of value stream management is starting to gain a lot of traction in the industry. So let's talk about that. Eric, why don't you start that conversation?
Excellent. Thanks, Charlene. So first, the value stream type of definitions, right? Where it represents, there's a lot of definitions, but I'll talk about one of the main ones around the business aspects and the lean foundation, right? Value streams represent a series of steps that an organization uses to implement solutions that provide that continuous flow of value to the customer. So these solutions can be the products, services, or systems delivered to this customer, whether internal or external to that enterprise. And what's interesting is that it's a lean practice, and it really started in the manufacturing. And usually, when I see folks talk about value stream or value stream management, they're using it in the context of the manufacturing domain, which is kind of interesting. But you got to remember, in the manufacturing domain world, it was really about removing waste, but it was a lot about repeatability, right? Because you had a product line, so it was really about quality driven, and the product was pretty much the same widget that you were producing down the assembly line. It was all about efficiency and quality and getting out the door. That really doesn't apply to our software domain, right? Because in the software domain, we're talking about a product, but the feature set is evolving, right? We're doing this continuous type of improvement. That's the agility, the agile teams, the team of teams that have been formed. These agile teams have been formed. So it's really about, the quality is kind of starting to be, that's built in, but it's about scaling, right? So the introduction really that we start seeing this concept of value stream is really when they start talking about the scaling agile. And this is where we see that one of the first indicators that we see here is that scaling agile type of practices or frameworks, that's when the introduction of value streams and the end-to-end starts coming into play. So it's moving beyond just agile product delivery. It's more about the awareness around that, right? And it's interesting because while still new, this is one of the indicators to say here, 95% of the enterprises report interest, near-term plans, or current adoption of the VSM. So it is still an awareness type of a struggle there. That's bringing it on. But if they started down this scaling agile type of practice, then the introduction awareness the light bulb goes off and it starts coming into play. And this is where the value stream management aspects start coming in as well. And Forrester talks about it as a combination of people, process, technology that maps, optimizes, visualizes, measures, and this is key, governs that business flow. So it's really looking at, as Dan alluded to, if I really have the understanding and map to my strategy, my portfolio, and my work items, and I could trace that all the way through to the delivery pipeline end to end, and be able to basically do a value stream mapping, right, which is usually the first step in the process around that, right? That's very, very key. And that's when the light bulb starts going off for organizations that they really need to be interconnected around that. Dan, you want to add anything here?
No, I agree.
Excellent. Excellent.
So I mean, it's early, right? We're early on, but we see that people are interested and realize there is something there, right?
Yep. And then the next slide is also interesting because it drives in to what I was talking about in the awareness, right? So as they said, non-users without plans for VSM more often cite the skill, tool, or cultural limitations as reasons for not pursuing VSM currently than they do access to adequate alternatives. Again, folks that are going down the scaling agile or the type of transformations or that type of approach. So when they're being introduced to these methodologies and they're being disrupted and they need to be able to scale, that also exposes at the executive level. So if you see that third one there, which is 37% lack of executive support. So that starts bringing the executive and the management into the picture, and it starts tying this together. But you really do need a framework and approach to really start driving that awareness, and because it's a top-down initiative. It is. It's really a top-down type of driven approach that needs to happen there on that. And on the next slide, we get into a little bit more that Dan, you can talk about around the roadblocks as well from a technology standpoint.
Well, it's actually from both an organizational and technology standpoint, right?
Yep.
So there are certainly a number of challenges that we just started to talk about that organizations run into trying to get started with implementing value stream management. And as I just said, it's a combination of both organizational and technology. Same when we got started with DevOps. Now, what is not surprising, we again are talking about alignment between technology and business, right? It certainly impedes collaboration, and it turns out is the highest rated constraint from our survey, with I think 34% saying in there. Again, if we look back at DevOps, right, technology constraints, and I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, technology constraints seem to be addressed faster than the organizational constraints. Changing the culture in organizations takes time. We must somehow be able to overcome it has always been done that way, right? A lot of organizations fit into that mode. You know, business guys did the business side of things. We hand it off to developers, they develop. We hand it off to operations, they deliver. Well, I think we proved that dev and ops needs to be put together. And I think very, very quickly here, organizations are learning that we need to get the business folks into the loop much earlier in the process to really see significant value added through software. And every organization is becoming a software company today. So again, that was number one on our poll list here. But other results, again, Charlene, to you, lack of visibility across the pipeline, right? You can't do and create value if you don't have the right data to be able to do that. Too many manual processes. And again, I think that really comes down to we have all these different tools across different categories that aren't properly connected together so that we can take that data and then put it and unify that data into a common data model where we can actually make useful insight out of it. And then once we have that data, we need to identify what are the correct metrics that measure business value, right? So I think it's an iterative step that organizations need to take to get a better understanding and overcome these challenges. Let's go to the next now. All right, so let's now take a look at how organizations have started implementing value stream management. What tools, or really I should say, what lack of tools are they using? Only 2% say they have an end-to-end solution today. And that actually might be pretty high to be honest. As there has not been a holistic platform that could collect and measure data from the early planning phase all the way down through development, delivery, into production. Yeah. Now, 51% say they use a series of tools to aggregate the data into a VSM dashboard. So at least they're using the different tools, collecting it, and trying to unify that data to make value out of it. Where 21% say they manually pull the data from all these different tools to create a VSM view. And then others, again, not surprisingly, but at least they're going through the effort of starting VSM, use Excel in a spreadsheet to put that data together.
The evil Excel.
Obviously, there is a gap that needs to be filled here.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
And I think that actually will lead us into challenge number 3.
All right, great. Well, I'm going to do a quick time check. We are 35 minutes past the hour. So I want to plug right into challenge 3 and kind of get the conversation moving a little bit faster, because I know we have other challenges. There's always more challenges than solutions, right? So let's move right on to the next one, which is, VSM is far from mature. So, but organizations, that have adopted it earlier than others, obviously are moving faster and they're seeing more results. So what are some of the metrics that you guys are seeing regarding that? And Eric, again, I'm going to turn it over to you first.
Yes. So on the next slide, this is a super critical slide because it ties back to the visibility that the slide that I talked about, where we had that very, very low visibility problem around that. Because if you don't have visibility, you can't measure. And if you can't measure, you can't improve. This, I have to admit, I was shocked by this data here, by just connecting the team and work streams, how much visibility was positively impacted. And it goes to what Dan was talking about as far as the end-to-end tooling. I think that for a lot of organizations, I think the planning for them and the visibility is still at the work item user story, maybe some feature type level, but anything past that, I think, has been really a challenge. And this shows that you absolutely need to have and bring in at the portfolio type of level. Because if you bring in the portfolio level, right, then you're bringing in the strategy component and the strategy piece, right? You start bringing in these strategic themes that are introduced, and you can start aligning your value streams to that, and start funding your value streams based upon your strategy and what's driving the business. Also, what's very interesting here, if you look at the big gaps, the last 4, the product level, release level, portfolio level, enterprise level, I think is very interesting and very key here. Let's just go down there, right? So at the product level, right, we see them. So once we got the portfolio and the strategy, at the product level, as Dan alluded to, we have the concept producing work through the teams. So we now start understanding what we're doing, but why, right? Mm-hmm. And then we're starting to scale. And then at the release, it's not only when, but why, and probably, I think more importantly now, who, because we're bringing in the customer experience. Once we're bringing that in, we now have that feedback that goes back into the enterprise level. So that's really how we're tying that upstream and that downstream together from that strategic level. Makes sense?
Totally. Yep.
I think you got the next one there, do you?
I do, yes. So over 75% of VSM users who have started implementing value stream management say their initiatives have been effective and important to the business. So this is extremely promising, right? This is we know it's early on, but early results are very promising. So by just starting to implement VSM, organizations are seeing some extraordinary numbers here. So if we look at the results here, creating new value for end customers. My screen is blocked. Okay, yeah, so 90% satisfaction combined. Enabling collaboration across teams. So by just starting value stream management, we know that breaking down the silos between technology and business is important, but it's helping, right? And why is it helping if we think about this? More visibility, right? Value stream management is about increasing flow, getting more visibility, and sharing that across the teams, which allows you to communicate and collaborate much better. scaling Agile and DevOps as well. I mean, Agile and DevOps are the cornerstone to value stream management, right?
Mhm.
You just jump into value stream management without having those two together working within your environment. The last one here that I highlighted is applying automation, right? So we talked about that, but it's more than just applying automation, because if we have fragmented automation, it was shown that it doesn't work.
Right.
You really need to have fully connected and integrated automation across the tool chain, because that's where you're going to be able to gather, collect, and unify that data, and then make it available. So I thought there was a couple points here. I was trying to think about, what does this mean, right? So what does this tell us about VSM users, and how are they better positioned to do what from this, right? And so I captured a couple things. So one, identify and resolve disconnects and redundancies in the end-to-end stream, from the business making a request to IT delivering that into production, right? Once you see the flow and correct the problems, you've improved that all the way to production. And two, really, it goes with the visibility again, right? It gives different stakeholders views into where value is generated or lost. And it's, right, I think that's a key one that value stream brings. It's giving visibility to way more stakeholders that I think feel they have a hand in things today.
Well, maybe they also feel like they are part of it with value stream management, and they didn't really feel that way before.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exact point. I felt like a lot of times it's a handoff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
In until, okay, wait a minute, it went into production a week ago,
And everything's in context too, right? Everybody understands the reasons why things happen the way that they do, and how one impacts the other. So I love the idea of value stream management, and how it really does show the objectives and the the value of every piece of the process.
Yeah, it's tough not to say value, because value
Right,
is
exactly.
Exactly. The same thing all the time.
What's an adjective for value, or what's another word for value? All right, so got another challenge. What a surprise! So looking at Agile and DevOps, you guys have made the very good argument that without them, we don't really have decent VSM. We don't have good value stream management. But it also takes the product mindset to really keep VSM, chugging along in the organization. So Eric, again, I think you have some great metrics that show that.
Yes. This is I shared this with another colleague of mine, another company, and it brought an emotional reaction around this.
Break down crying.
Yeah, I think it was I think he shed a tear. Because it was it was confirming his fears in a way, right?
Oh.
Because there's good news and bad news here, right? I'll concentrate on the right hand side and then go into the left hand side, which kind of explains it, right? The good news here is that there are heavy investments and recognition that Agile and DevOps are very, very important. That's great, right? We established that. We're investing in Agile, we're investing in DevOps, where there isn't much of a disparity between the level of activity in each, right? 49% versus 47%, right? That tells me that people who are doing Agile, right, they're also doing DevOps and vice versa. That's great. Agile, as Dan alluded to and yourself, Dan, Agile and DevOps are better together. It's a winning combination. That's great. Okay. So bad news, right? So if we look down at the bottom here, right? Despite our efforts in Agile and DevOps, we still don't know why we're doing it. We still don't know how to track the work through the value stream. Therefore, we're placing bets that we don't know where it's going to pay off, right? At least we're not doing enough to make sure we're placing calculated bets, right? and manage that flow of work through the value stream or through the entire tool chain, right? So if you look at this at the bottom, the inability to identify KPIs and measuring the value delivered, well, why are we doing this if we don't know how to do that and we don't really understand the impact, which is to your point, Charlene, that you made, right? So if we're really taking Agile and DevOps seriously, making these investments, that's great. But if we don't know how to measure the value delivered against these efforts, I think we're really missing the point, right? And this was what my colleague at the other company was really saying, right? And this was very telling for him because it confirms what we see in the field every day, right? So of course in the industry we're getting better and better at this, and we do see the numbers improving, right? But there's still a big disconnect between doing Agile and DevOps, doing them together, but really understanding why we're doing it, being connected back to the business, and making sure that our investments and our activities or an investment in time and energy and all the blood and sweat and tears that go into this, and it's paying off at that business level and not just at the technical level, right? So really on the left-hand side there, it talks about where the tools are falling short, and we see that it's still kind of disconnected. It's still not really unified. And if you're not doing unified, then it's very hard to really put this together. And especially, I see mapping as being so low here, right? If you don't values mapping is like the first step, right? You have to do that. If you don't really do that, then you really don't understand your journey, right? And what you're actually producing.
Yeah.
So definitely, it's room for opportunity here to improve.
All right. So it's interesting that maybe VSM needs to come with an instruction manual. I don't know how to get started with VSM. Okay, another time check. We're 13 minutes to the top. So let's get through this last challenge, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for audience questions. We've gotten a lot in so far. So, okay, so the last one is, it's pretty obvious. It's also the same with DevOps and Agile. You can't just like go in and say, okay, we're going to do this. Organizations really need to kind of, take a step back, look at what they have now, and make the necessary changes to create a dedicated platform for value stream management. It's not something that's just kind of, a one and done situation. So, Dan, I think you're going to lead the comments on this one.
Yes, it's definitely an investment, right? All right, so let me just first summarize things, which I think leads into this slide here, right? So Agile and DevOps are definitely a foundation for value stream management. Organization alignment between business and technology is a huge challenge that needs to be overcome. VSM is still in its infancy, we know that, but 95% are interested or have started. So that's very promising as well. And those that have started are seeing some really phenomenal results. So again, all of these findings I find are very encouraging to what we're talking about today. By implementing VSM, organizations see results immediately. We did learn that users most often depend on a collection of tools to support VSM. Just 12% have a solution from a single vendor that they consider to be holistic. But on the other extreme, nearly a third are relying on completely manual tools. That's not going to scale. If you're able to get the full visibility from ideation to production, then the results can be pretty game-changing for organizations. So if we look now at the satisfaction rate for those that have successfully implemented, now again, this is on a small scale that we know, successfully implemented an end-to-end VSM solution, we're seeing 29% complete satisfaction with 84%, 55 very satisfied for an 84% satisfaction rate. That's pretty good. So I think for the sake of time here, Eric, that begs the question, what would an end-to-end VSM solution look like?
Yes, that comes into our next slide there. Huh? To set up.
So,
And yeah, you could go ahead and build it out.
I
But
will.
essentially what we're looking at is, again, the full end-to-end, right? It's not just the work item piece tied downstream. You really need to tie in that all the way from the strategy portfolio type of level. So that enterprise agile planning you need to have that connecting to your release orchestration. We talked about security and compliance. So you need to be able to have the necessary security and governance aspects and controls and capabilities around it. And you need to be able to have the monitoring, so you can measure it and start doing the improvement around the intelligence. And as Charlene alluded to, kind of a guidebook, right, or a framework.
Mhm.
This is where the agile scaling agile type frameworks like SAFe and Scrum at Scale, Xscale really come into play here, because when organizations are starting to scale out their agile and DevOps type of initiatives, this is the type of platform and capabilities that they need to have.
Yeah. Just a little on top of that, right? I mean, this is what we're calling an end-to-end agile plus DevOps solution, which is your value stream delivery and management platform, right? That can actually bring a lot of those things that we talked about today to the enterprise. The ability to connect all of your tools from planning to production. We're not saying it's one tool. We understand that enterprises are going to use the tools that they love, from open source tools to testing tools to security tools. You have to be able to integrate those together and create that connected pipeline so that you can gather that data and make it useful for our value stream metrics.
Yep.
And if you're successfully able to do that, let's go, I think we have one more slide here. If we're able to put that together, this is what you're able to get, right? The strong foundation of Agile and DevOps. You can get authoritative upstream and downstream software system of record. So that's what we're talking about when we're taking that data and unifying it together. We're creating this system of record that can be used across the entire delivery, that can be shared with all the different stakeholders within the organization.
Exactly, and it's really about getting value to customers faster and optimize business outcomes, right? So you need to unite that software development and delivery into a single measurable flow that promotes that constant feedback to drive that continuous improvement. And so companies can drive innovation and deliver innovation through their customer base as well.
Yep, very good. So I think we're okay. Because I think we're almost to our final remarks here. So we're a little bit faster at the end than I thought, but that's okay. Do you want me to go first, Eric, and then I'll leave it to you? Or?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
All right. So overall, I find this research was very encouraging, very, very encouraging. VSM is at the forefront of a software development mind shift centered at understanding business outcomes. It helps companies minimize waste, provide end-to-end visibility to all stakeholders, and promotes strategic value delivery. Organizations have gotten better at delivering code faster, but what good is speed, right? If you're not delivering value to the customers, delivering it faster makes no sense. So focus on building an end-to-end solution that increases flow, which is automation, right? Gives deeper visibility to all stakeholders, business all the way to developers, and measures value back to the business. All of this can make a big difference in customers' overall experience. And ultimately, I think that is what makes organizations successful. So overall, I think value stream management has a lot to offer. We're just in the early stages, but I think we're starting to figure things out. And if we can provide this full solution, end-to-end solution for organizations, they're going to see a big difference.
Yes, and Dan, just to add on top of that. So unlike the project type of mindset that's been prevalent before, so unlike projects whose results often are short term and impact ends as soon as it's completed, value streams, as we see from the research, have a lasting impact on your organization, right? So a more value-centric approach empowers organizations to continuously deliver improved products, services, and processes that impact revenue streams. And I think that's what's really key, because with the spontaneous shifts in the digital transformation marketplace, right, it's brought on by globalization and dramatic changes that we're seeing in technology, scaling Agile and DevOps transformations by leveraging a VSM type of platform is becoming more paramount for enterprises to succeed.
Awesome.
Charlene?
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. Really, really good stuff. We have 5 minutes left. So obviously not time for a huge question and answer session, but I think we can get to one question. What do you guys think?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. All right, great. So here, I'll throw it out and you guys can fight over it. To what degree do you think VSM is evolving into a business intelligence application that the rest of the business will employ to track software development projects that impact revenue streams? Speaking of revenue streams.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah, we're seeing that, and Dan alluded to it, right? So, due to the amount of data and knowledge collection points of information within your value stream, right? The manual processes for consuming and interpreting that data is not efficient anymore, right? Right. Thus the advent and evolution of business intelligence like explainable AI is needed to really manage and deliver budgeted value streams. And this is where the automated compliance, governance that we're talking about, the security and trust really becomes foundational as part of that. Dan, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I like the way the question was worded. So kudos to whoever worded the question. Yes, absolutely.
They're obviously thinking about it really, really hard. So,
yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So, I'm sorry, guys, we really don't have any more time for question and answers. But if we didn't get to your question, which is probably most likely, just please know that the folks from CollabNet version 1 and Zevia Labs are getting a copy of all of the questions. So I'm sure somebody from the organization will be more than happy to follow up with you offline and get your question answered. Also want to remind the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, or if you just want to listen to it again, you'll have the opportunity to do so. We are going to be sending out an email after today's webinar that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the DevOps.com website. So you can always go look for it there. Just go to DevOps.com/webinars and look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. And before we close things out, I did promise at the top of the hour that we'd be doing a drawing for 3 $50 Amazon gift cards. So let me go ahead and do that right now. Actually, our awesome producer, Jade, has actually already drawn the winners. So I'm going to go ahead and read off the names. Our winners today are Karen H. So congratulations, Karen. Jason B. Congratulations, Jason. And Tammy L. Congratulations, Tammy. Congratulations to all three of you. We'll be contacting you offline via email after today's webinar to get your Amazon gift card emailed over to you. And I guess with that, I just want to say thank you so much to Eric and to Dan for such a great presentation, such a great conversation, such great information all the way around. So thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it. I know the audience is
Thank you so much, Charlene.
All right, great.
Thanks so much, Charlene.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
you're welcome. Anytime.
Don't forget to download the report.
Download the reports right there on the screen.
Right there on the screen.
The URL is right there waiting for you. And I also do want to thank the audience for joining me today. Great turnout,
Absolutely.
Great questions, great everything. So thanks so much for your time and have a great day, everybody. This is Charlene O'Hanlon and I'm signing out.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.